Dun 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 dun. Welcome back. My name is Matthew Conlon. This is my channel dedicated to my hobbies like comics, video games, anime, and RPGs. Today we're mashing together two of my favorites, comics and RPGs, for another in my series of Adventures League Legal Builds for X-Men in D&D. It's finally time to wrap this up with Storm. Storm, one of the most powerful X-Men, known as an Omega-level threat capable of ending the world. This was a tough build. I tried really hard to hammer her into Bard. And I wanted Bard because Bard gets a fair number of the weather damagey spells, but also their magical secrets would allow her to take Storm of Vengeance at level 20, specifically because I wanted to avoid taking Druid, which normally gets that spell. Druid's where most of the weather control type spells are, but Storm has, to the best of my knowledge, never once transformed into an animal under her own power. And yes, you could absolutely build a Druid and just ignore Wild Shape as a feature, but I'm not about that. I don't like having useless features because part of the character's balance is built on having that option available, and I don't like self-nerfing. So instead I worked really hard to try and fit it into Bard because she's been a great leader to multiple teams over the course of the years. In fact, I think the only reason she's ever stepped down as leader of a team was so that she could step up as a more important leader someplace else. So let's jump right into it. Race, we're taking human. Storm's a human. Most of these X-Men ended up being human unless I thought one of the racial features or just their general appearance warranted something else. So Storm's starting off as a human. We're going variant human with the feat toughness. Now a lot of these builds end up having toughness in them, but if you've ever read comics, you know characters routinely get blown through walls with explosions or shot or stabbed or die and come back to life. Storm's no different, so we're taking the toughness feat. It's also going to be important because I thought for the spread of stats I wanted to give her, and the way a lot of these spells work, she might end up being a little closer to combat than we might otherwise like. Stats. Strength 8. Someplace had to be a dumb stat, and I've never seen Storm do anything particularly strength related in the comics. Dex 14. Con 13. Intelligence 12. Wisdom 10. Charisma 15. Storm is very charismatic, and that's good, because for class, we're going a Storm Sorcerer. Background, lot of options here. She was married to Black Panther, so T'Challa. She could take the noble background as the Queen of Wakanda. Alternatively, you could go back to her original origin story where Xavier found her as a pickpocket, so you could go with Urchin. Both are totally fine. You could go with Soldier, because she's been an X-Men. X-woman? X-man? She's been fighting for decades. So Soldier also works. A lot of options. Skills, whatever your background gives you, and then athletics and acrobatics if you can figure out a way to do it. Although you might also want to give her Arcana because it's good for sorcerers to have. She'll get a bonus skill as a human. Class, Storm Sorcerer 20. I thought really hard about maybe taking 2 levels of Tempest Cleric, but Storm doesn't really worship gods because for a period of time in her history she was considered a god, and if I'm not mistaken has also, I think, wielded Mjolnir, so she actually was considered a god and also benefited from all the powers of Thor, in addition to her own world-shakingly powerful mutant powers herself. So I just couldn't bring myself to tag in those 2 layers. Level 1. Cantrips. Thunderclap, Shocking Grasp, and Message. Her ability to whisper into the wind and have it carried far away, and then her ability to use Thunder and Lightning as attacks are pretty much default. You might want to ditch Shocking Grasp in favor of Gust. I don't particularly care for that cantrip, but it's an option. Level 1, Fog, Cloud, Feather, Fall, and Absorb elements. That means your damage dealing capacity at this level is really going to be limited to your Thunderclap cantrip. Like I said, she's going to end up in combat. Or Shocking Grasp if you went with that one instead. She's going to be in combat a lot in these early levels especially. Level 2, Thunder Wave. That's our new spell known. You could also juggle Fog, Cloud, and Thunder Wave at level 1 so that she spends a little less time in combat. But this is pretty much it. We're going straight up to 20 and we're taking every spell with the word storm in it, every thunder, lightning damage, wind controlling type of spell there is. Level 3, we're getting second level spells, Gust of Wind and Shatter. I think we only learn one new spell, but we're going to swap out one of our earlier spells for one of these. Level 4, Snillox Snowball Swarm or Warding Wind, your preference. I really like Warding Wind as something to throw if you get hit with a Stinking Cloud or any other type of cloud attack spell. Level 5, Fly and Lightning Bolt, no brainer. Level 6, Sleet Storm. Level 7, Storm Sphere. We're into 4th level spells now. Storm Sphere is from Xanathar's Guide, as is the Storm Sorcerer subclass. Level 8, Ice Storm. Level 9, Animate Objects. Animate Objects. Is she telekinetic or something? No. I picture this as she creates a whirlwind that's full of shrapnel, sharp objects. So you throw out your 10 daggers or your handful of coins or what have you. And then she casts Animate Objects by just creating a whirlwind that those things go flying around in and attack a given target. It's just one of the best. I've also seen her lift things with tornadoes. Speaking of tornadoes, let's continue. 10, Cone of Cold. Another high damage, wide area spell. 11, Chain Lightning. You might want to drop one of your earlier spells to take this one in. If there's another spell at this level you want. Keep in mind, these are just my choices. You might find something else that you like more, or you might be comfortable deviating from her norm. For example, at level 5, you could ditch Lightning Bolt and instead take, what's that spell called? Hypnotic Pattern, because that is just one of the best spells in the game. Say she's creating the Aurora Borealis. I like it. I think it works, and pound for pound, it's way more effective than Lightning Bolt. Level 12, you might want to take Investiture of the Wind. I personally dislike these spells. I think their duration is too short, or the fact that their concentration makes them way less effective. I know the fire one gives you immunity to fire, and that's nice, but generally speaking, I'm not a big fan of these spells. But you could take it because it gives you a fly speed and a whole bunch of other stuff that Storm can usually do, just sort of in the background. Level 13. We have our 7th level spell, Whirlwind. It's, in my opinion, amazing. It is a 30-foot tall column with a 10-foot base. You can move it as a bonus action. It moves just in a direction, 30 feet. Any medium-sized or smaller object that isn't bolted down gets sucked up into it. Anything that it touches might be trapped inside it. You move it on top of a creature, they have to start making saving throws, strength-based saving throws, or be restrained. If they are restrained, they start to get lifted up into the air. Every time they fail a saving throw, they get lifted higher. And every time it does that, they also take 10d6 bludgeoning damage. It is an amazing, amazing spell. Level 15. Not a lot here that's very in theme, so I went with Power Word Stun. Her ability to shock things with lightning bolts and not kill them, Power Word Stun fits that bill nicely in my opinion. So that's our 8th level slot, and then at level 17, again, not a whole lot in theme for her here. You could maybe say Meteor Swarm, because with her ability to control winds, she might be able to bring things down out of the atmosphere. Anything that's just floating around up there in orbit. Close enough, and Meteor Swarm is an amazing spell. I can't imagine once you have Meteor Swarm, if you don't have another spell like Wish or something, not just making sure that your first fight of every day doesn't just end in Meteor Swarm on round 1. But since that might not be too much in theme, I decided to go with Power Word Kill, because again, like I said, her ability to shoot people with lightning, shoot them with a little, they get stunned. You shoot them with a lot, they just die. I'm not a huge fan of the Power Word spells, but you may have noticed that Wolverine has a whole bunch of levels of Fighter Battlemaster, which means at level 7, the Wolverine build, any Battlemaster at level 7 will be able to look at a target and tell if they have more hit points than them or less hit points than them. Which means if you have the Battlemaster feeding you that information, it means those Power Word spells, which are normally, in my opinion, garbage, because you can't really know those things, are now hyper effective. Because if your fighter has 100 hit points and they look at the enemy and the DM says, oh, they have less hit points than you, he says, no! And then she Power Word kills them or Power Word stuns them. And that's hyper effective. Storm has made some tough decisions during her time in the X-Men. I don't think she would be too broken up about having to kill the occasional target. And either way, these are X-Men characters in Dungeons & Dragons, so they are not one-to-one translations. Play them as you see fit. So thanks so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed this series of Adventures League builds. I'm going to be putting up one for Funimation Skeletor in the near future, and maybe some other old school He-Man characters in the next series. Thanks so much for your time. Have a great day. If you enjoyed this, like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell. If you want to find out when my next video goes up, they have been more consistent than they were, less consistent than I'd like, but like I mentioned in one of my previous videos, one of my distinguished lady cats is in her decline, and that's made it a little difficult for me to get certain things done. But again, thanks for your time, and have a great day.